Welcome to Dream Pushers. We connect you with Web3's vanguard, creators and entrepreneurs shaping the future. Hosted by Joannou and presented by Draper University.
I want to quickly mention that none of this is investment advice or financial advice, trading advice, or any sort of advice. And we do not recommend any cryptocurrency or investing in any projects. We're just showcasing the stories of founders. Quickly mention that none of this is investment advice or financial advice, trading advice, or any sort of advice. And we do not recommend any cryptocurrency or investing in any projects. We're just showcasing the stories of founders. Hey all, welcome back to Overnight Success. It's Joannou. And today we have Casey Fenton, friend of mine, incredible entrepreneur, and we'll be talking about Upstock. It's helping not only blockchain startups, but startups in general have these Fortune 1000 stock plans that only in the past was available to the Facebooks and Googles of the world because it was super expensive to set up. So lots of learning there. Love what he's doing in the crypto space as well. Mechanisms for rewarding employees and stuff does lend itself well to tokens. Super interesting chat around Upstock, but prior to founding that company, he was also the founder of CouchSurfing. So serial entrepreneur, got CouchSurfing to 14 million members worldwide with travelers crashing on couches around the world in 200 plus cities. So low cost accommodations, cultural experiences, and the original Airbnb, I would say. Hope you enjoy the chat. Cheers. Casey, welcome. How you doing, buddy?
I am doing excellent. Enjoying the nice weather here in sunny San Francisco. How about yourself?
We've known each other for a while. I love what you're doing and wanted to share it with the audience, particularly given the nature of the show being Web3 and my kind of immersion in the space. Me trying to share my learnings as I go with access to some of the top founders around the world. Extremely lucky to have that ability to tap on the shoulder of founders from Arbe and VChain stuff and yourself. And today I want to go through your journey and then deep into the equity space and the gaming mechanics almost, or getting your early community, your early contributors active in a meaningful way. If it's working nicely, it's probably just in the background while you're executing on the vision and stuff. Before we do all that, I'd love to just hear a little bit about your background. I know it, but for the audience, what was your education? How did you start your entrepreneurial journey?
Absolutely. Happy to share. And thank you so much for having me on the show. I guess 44 years old now, and I've spent pretty much my whole life founding companies trying to help people share. That's really my kind of North Star. I've had a couple exits in my time. I grew up in New Hampshire, so the Northeast, small ski town. I went and lived in Alaska for quite some years, worked in politics, got involved in state and federal politics, and went to school for computer science and philosophy. Learned how to become a self-taught coder. And most people probably know me as one of the founders of CouchSurfing. Started back in, I registered the domain in 1999 and took a few years to get it going. And I said to myself, can't let another year of my life go by without seeing if this is possible. And so I got to programming, started programming at dark winters of Alaska. And I just said to friends, hey, I'm not going to go to the bar with you. I'm going to see about a thing I need to know. And making those sacrifices because I really wanted to connect people in the world. And I thought that there was something there around sharing resources and then learning and discovery and getting to know each other and having a backstage pass to the world. So that's, in a nutshell, computer programmer turned into a kind of a legal finance leadership role, which was very hard for me. Starting off as somebody who was probably one of the most shy people in my class. I grew my hair long, so it wouldn't call on me, just trying to fade into the curtain. So I had to spend a lifetime trying to overcome all that shyness to try to become a leader. So that's what some of my struggles has been, but really it's been a beautiful thing in pushing myself.
Can we elaborate on this a little bit, right? So this led to the journey of you traveling a little bit, putting yourself out there a little bit more, ultimately led to CouchSurfing, right?
That's right. Yes. I would always love to travel. I just got deep into philosophy. I lived in a small town growing up, just of 1,000 people in Brownfield, Maine. And I thought to myself, am I going to live and die in a small town? Statistically, it's very possible that would be the case. And I don't even know what I don't know. How do I get myself out there into the world and try to experience it? I came up with this idea of intensity and diversity and frequency of experiencing. And I said, if I can just throw myself into the world, have all of these different experiences, maybe I'll have more perspective, maybe I'll learn something, and maybe I can try to figure out what maybe a good life is. And that led me to traveling, buying random tickets to different places, walking around like a ghost on the streets, taking pictures of statues, but wondering, boy, it would be so great if I could talk to those people over there. they seem so cool, but I'm so shy. And I'm not going to walk up to somebody in a bar and just strike up a conversation. That would just feel so awkward for me. And there has to be a way. Of course, using technology is always your computer burger, but that's just basically how you're thinking of solving every problem with some code. And which, of course, led me to CouchSurfing.
So I guess, look, there's quite a bit there, right? I'm almost just, because I'm having this conversation with my daughter recently around, we were all afraid to do things at times. And I just said, look, you got to just put yourself out there a bit, and that strange becomes familiar over time. And then it's almost, as an entrepreneur, it's almost the other way. Like, you're now at the seeking out intentionally the uncomfort. Is that a good way to explain entrepreneurship?
I think so. You read, when you're trying to become an entrepreneur, you read like what you don't like. It was my dad used to say. You have to be comfortable with the challenging and putting yourself into situations where it's not your way of being. And I certainly had to do that. But one of the things I think has been the most helpful is looking at my identity. What I noticed was that if I identify with being really shy, and that I don't like things like that, I'm going to find more evidence that I'm either shy or that's too difficult. And that'll become a self-fulfilling prophecy. But what I've learned over time is that trying to really shape my identity and say, I am a person who likes that. I like those challenges. I want to have difficult conversations. I want to push myself. Really focusing on the identity, I think, was the big breakthrough for me, because I noticed, and I'm actually trying to write a book about this a little bit, where we become what other people tell us we are. We become whatever we believe we are. We'll just find more evidence of it. It's like a snowball, identity snowball. You're right. You need to put yourself into those difficult conversations. But if you keep telling yourself, it's not me, it's too difficult, it'll be slow going. But you could really speed that up by saying, I am somebody, and then that can do this, outgoing, that is taking risks, that believes in myself. And then you'll just find evidence of that, and that will just really speed it up. And that's really maximized my own personal evolution.
Very cool. Yeah, it's scary sometimes, but those experiences, maybe once in a while they are terrible as you thought they were going to be, but 9 times out of 10, they're amazing and help you set you up for life. But I won't skydive. There's just some things I won't do. All right. So entrepreneurship. And I'm sure we're going to go on a few tangents here as we go, which I enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
Now we are couchsurfing, big business, globally known. At some point, you have this idea that you want to start a new business and a new challenge, knowing full well all that comes with that. The problem, if I articulate it well, is that then you saw some of the issues you were having with previous companies around equity and incentives and stuff, and this led to Upstock. Is that right?
Yeah, you got it spot on. Basically, as a multi-time founder, I sold my first company, and just dealing with lawyers, and just took so long to finally get an incentive and equity plan in place. And that was when we brought CouchSurfing to Silicon Valley, and we're just so excited. We're like, finally, we have the wherewithal, we have enough money for lawyers who can figure out how you give equity. How do you align people and to want to give their best efforts? In the early days of CouchSurfing, we had people that were either volunteering or we could pay little bits and pieces. At the end of the day, we weren't paying them enough to stop exactly everything they're doing, stop focusing more on traveling, but really meet the needs of the servers that are melting down and the members who need some help with safety requests. You have to be able to deliver on those hard things. And so you need a bigger commitment, and you need to overcome larger and scaling problems. So how do you get that greater commitment? It's not enough to just give people cash. You need to give them other things to identify with. Identifying with the fact that we're CouchSurfers, we want to change the world. We love this. We're bringing great value to people. We're hearing about how that value is turning into great experiences and evolution for all the CouchSurfers around the world. But at the end of the day, how do we solve people's basic needs enough, so pay them enough, but then show them that they are owners, they are actual owners of this thing, that they can identify with owning it. And I think we improve and naturally want to improve anything we identify with or anything we own. And so when we moved to Silicon Valley, we had some of the best investors, best lawyers in the world. In fact, our lawyer was Steve Venuto, who just did Facebook's equity plans. And he also was Lawyer of the Year for the Instagram deal with Instagram acquiring, or Facebook acquiring. And he gave us our stock options and we gave them to our workers. And I was pardon my French, so freaking thrilled about that. And just reading, here we go, give these to our workers. And the workers actually came back, they read it, they tried to understand it. I said, hey, I can't explain it to you as a conflict of interest. I don't want to lead you astray legally. That's what our lawyers told us. And they came back and they said, Casey, seems like a scam. Why would I need to buy the equity for tens of thousands of dollars. I'm already busting my butt here. Should I just get the equity? I thought that's how it works. You get equity. You put in your time over time and you do great things to get the equity. And I said, yeah, I know. That's what I thought it was too. They said, can you just show it to me in a dashboard or a spreadsheet or something? And I was like, I don't know. Here are these complex legal documents. I don't know, sign it, put it in a drawer and forget about it is what they felt like I was asking them to do. It just broke my heart because everything that we were trying to create and all that great alignment, the response was misalignment, confusion, delusion, disconnection. I thought, this is blowing my mind. Is this the best that Silicon Valley can offer? So I went back to our lawyer and he laughed and he said, well, there's actually better systems out there. They're new, they'll cost a lot. There's something called double trigger restricted stock units. All of the best companies are using them now. You can't afford it, kid. Just keep moving. So we had to use the stock options and it had the predicted result where people weren't really sure if they'd ever receive it. They would have to buy it. If they ever left the company, these things would just vaporize unless they could come up with tens and tens of thousands of dollars to pay for them. And then I did that research and it just stuck in my mind. I researched these RSUs and finally I got a lawyer to give me some RSU documents for $30,000 for the boilerplate. And we attached them to a Google spreadsheet. So workers could just basically see their ownership in real time, understand, okay, what is the table? What is my slice of the table? What if we 10x, 100x as a company? What would my slice look like? Why should I stay? Why should I keep vesting? And it was like light bulb went on. And everybody started feeling more aligned. It was, I would say, pretty palpable that people would start arguing with me about where we should go a little bit in a friendly way. And I thought, yes, this isn't just a bunch of yes people. These are people that truly feel like they're others and they care about the outcomes and they're thinking about the problems of the company in the shower on the way to work, laying in bed at night because they can see it. And then the document allowed them to not have to buy it, that the equity would always be worth something because RSUs are always worth something compared to stock options that could go underwater. It just was a totally different game. And then I ran into Cyan Bannister at Founders Fund and told her about it once after a conference. She said, this is incredible. You should totally make this into a company. And Founders Fund said, we want to invest right away. So they invested a few $100,000. Then we said, okay, this was a few years ago when we started working on this. And instead of it just being a side project that we were using in our own companies, we said, really, let's bring this to the world because right now the world is only 8% worker owned and it's becoming almost like the UN's SDGs, Sustainable Development Goal, for helping people have more ownership, creating more income and wealth for all kinds of people, not just the richest 10% or raise the floor on wealth.
Absolutely. Yeah. So just a couple of things there, right? So one is people's expectations as early employees at high growth startups around equity, because I learn a lot every time I speak to you too, is that the company gets acquired, they're going to get this big payday, but the reality is they have to come up with a bunch of money to release to pay for those stock options, right? That's one of the big ones.
Yeah. So one of the big ones is, and there's a great example recently, there's a company called Bolt. This is just in the news. Bolt said to their workers, you're going to need to probably convert, if you're going to leave the company, you need to buy these stock options. And several of their workers had to take out $100,000 loans, personally liable for these loans. And then they got laid off the next week.
Wow.
So basically then they have to make this gamble. Like, okay, do I want to spend $100,000? And I don't know if Bolt is going to make it or not. I have no idea. And I just worked my butt off for like years. And now I'm being asked to pay for the possibility of getting this equity. What is going on? It just seems adding insult to injury. Mm-hmm. And if they had just used double trigger RSUs, this would not get rushed. They would have the equity, even if they leave the company, whatever time they serve they would get their fair share of the equity. And that's, again, just why all of those top startups and top companies have all moved to double trigger RSUs. It's usually a lot of lawyers make a lot of money from the complexity. The more complex things are, the more people are arguing, the more there's information asymmetry. That's when you need lawyers to solve and work out those complexities. And because RSUs are so simple, there's just a lot less lawyering going on and there's less money to be made. In fact, you don't need to do 409A valuation with RSUs. Really early on, when you need an external counsel who's not aligned with the company so much, the tendency is to get people involved in complex things that cost a lot of money. But when you have an in-house counsel, is immediately going to switch to RSUs because that just helps the company lower the cost and it makes workers makes workers happier. They don't have to buy it. They can believe in it. And that's why if you talk to any FANG worker, the Facebook, Apple, Netscape, and Netflix and Google, then they are just like, what are stock options? We are so used to RSUs. We love RSUs. I would never get involved with any startup that wants to offer me a stock option. I would ask for an RSU.
And so on that, right? So then the product becomes an easy way. The value prop, I suppose, is that then now you give access to startups who could not afford this kind of RSU setup.
Yeah.
And then also in the back, you've also gamified a little bit. You like that spreadsheet that you mentioned now takes it as a new dimension, and I can see like how my contribution is impacting company growth. And they think a lot of it's almost OKR kind of thing, right? Like that I know where doesn't matter where I am in the chain, my bit is impacting the kind of the top.
Right. Yeah. So for the company pocketbook perspective, company pays 5 times less than going with a lawyer and stock options, all in all of the different factors there. Workers pay less because they don't have to buy them. And they usually with RSU, you get more because you have a strike price of 0 instead of having to buy them. So worker ends up making more in general. And then, like you said, we offer different kinds of equity. So if somebody wants to offer the kind of the standard 4 years, 1 year cliff, call that fixed vesting. It's a fixed number of shares over a fixed amount of time. Great. You can offer that. If you want to do something more dynamic where you say the company says, we want to offer 1% of our equity to our advisor. And we don't know how many advisors we'll have on, but we'll just keep adding advisors to the pool. And we're going to give each advisor 100 points for every hour that they contribute. And if they don't contribute, they can't log any time or get any points because a lot of advisors will want to sign on, but then not do anything. And then they become dead weight. So it really incentivizes advisors to take action because they know that for every hour they provide their advice and service, they're going to get more points. They can see their slice of that 1%. Maybe the company's worth $10 million and that 1% is worth $100,000. And they can see, okay, for every hour I'm working, I'm getting a larger piece of that pie, unless maybe some other advisors are providing value as well. And that allows you to limit you're not going to have that scarcity mindset when you're using dynamic equity because you're not running out of trying to lowball people and give them less equity. You could just give them, you could say, based on how much you contribute, you'll see in real time your slice of the pie. Some people remember the book Slicing Pie from years ago like that, but it's fully legal. It has a whole legal framework and it has a full deferred compensation model from a tax perspective built on top of it. So it's not just something that pre-incorporation companies can use, but this works for companies from day one all the way up to post IPO.
And so as you're saying this, right, and I remember the first time you talking to me about all this, or even, I guess, more recently, this kind of setup, right, obviously has, tremendous benefit to startups, right? But also what immediately springs to mind, the reason I got you on the show today, given the Web3 focus.
And there's part of this that is Web3, so we haven't even gotten into that part yet.
Yeah. So this becomes like the perfect mechanism. People are trying to do this with a number of products around how do I not incentivize like the early stages of a company, the kind of, the marketing efforts and all this stuff in the crypto space around it's often done with some sort of token distribution or promises of NFTs and stuff. So I'd love to hear how you managed to capture some of the excitement in the Web3 space and then not pivot because you still handled the Web2 companies, for lack of a better term, but also offer the ability to help these kind of Web3 focused companies the same benefits of the product.
Yeah, great question. So what we noticed is that the framework for deferred compensation for stock actually applies to any asset. So that means tokens, NFTs, gold bars, any commodity, whatever, any asset that we could have that they want to distribute in a fair way that doesn't get taxed unless there's actual value later gets created or dispersed. And so we generalized our papers after reading a bunch of Harvard papers on this about RTUs, restricted token units. And so it's a little bit different, but it's basically 90% similar to RSUs. And so we adopted this after talking with a whole bunch of crypto companies and saw that this helps them tremendously. For instance, if they are pre-ICO, often they want to offer some tokens, but they don't have them on a market yet. They could create them out of thin air. But what happens when you just say, hey, worker, I'm going to give you some token? The problem there is with the company, depending on what the company is worth, they might have a taxable event this year. It could be thousands and thousands of dollars. And then you could give those tokens to those workers, but then they may have a taxable event before you know that the company is worth anything. It makes it so much easier to do the same thing that regular companies are doing with stock and RSUs, with an RTU. It allows you to offer those tokens a promise for the future tokens, saying, if we reach a certain milestone, like an ICO or maybe some other milestone, like acquisition, and the worker performs their tasks, like they work for 4 years, they gather a bunch of points based on their contributions, maybe they're advisors, maybe they're even community members. You want in your Discord server, you have a whole bunch of community members, maybe 1,000 community members that are all performing little micro tasks. And then you can give them points for all those micro tasks. And then you can see out of that community pool of 3%, what portion of that do I currently have? And if there was a liquidity event today, wow, I would make $50,000 worth of tokens because of my contribution. Wow, I want to keep contributing more and keep providing more value and so forth. So what this does is it allows token companies to not have to go and use expensive lawyers, do expensive 409A valuations for the cost of those tokens every time they want to deliver tokens to somebody throughout the course of the year. And maybe high growth crypto companies, that value could be changing dramatically all the time, up and down. And every time you do that, you need to spend $5,000 or $10,000 on another 409A valuation just to know the value of the tokens you're distributing, which ends up being a piece of paper that nobody can understand. They can sign it, put it in your, forget about it. Much better to say, you'll only pay tax in the future if we're successful. Here's what you have. Here's a dashboard where you can see it, believe it, trust it, and get motivated about seeing it going up and to the right. This is just really makes it so much less costly and a lot more motivating and a lot easier to retain people using tokens.
Is it the perfect storm around the growth of Web3 that kind of focused on community DAOs, right? It's been a massive driver for the uptake of the product. So I'd love to hear about that and how it's all coming together, and then maybe just even how perhaps your thoughts have changed around building the company.
Great question. So early on when we were converting CouchSurfing, and we had so many community members that had been contributing in different ways. And I said to the lawyers, I want to reward all of these community members. We give them equity. And the lawyers looked at me with this, are you insane? You want to put that many people on your cap table? I'm sorry, this is a hard no. There's just no way we will allow this at all. We're nervous about having regular workers on the cap table. Never mind, 1,000 community members? You've lost your mind. And I was like, no, because there has to be a way to reward people for helping them get aligned to create great and giving them equity for that. That's what kind of tokens have tried to do. And when you have a utility token, because it's not a security, you can do that more easily. But a lot of people are gem a square peg in a round hole there. And when you have something like an RTU, it makes it very easy to promise future value to your community. Any size, could be 10,000 community contributors. As long as they're providing bona fide value, then you can give them a promise of future equity. And because they're not custodians of that equity, you don't run into all of those shareholders' rights and all of those questions around distributing something to a person when it's a security, but treating it as a utility. Because one of the triggers on these RTUs is that it can only be, maybe it's like a third trigger here, we call it. It will only be distributed once it's safe to do so from a regulatory perspective. So in seeing this and seeing so many companies wanting to share equity with their community, but having no good vehicle, and either lawyers saying, oh no, you're going to put them on their cap table, or it's just too expensive, too complex, we said, we'll do all the heavy lifting. We'll do all of the heavy duty research and lawyering. We'll bring $500,000 worth of legal to bear and bring this to the world so that the world can benefit from this instead of each person or each company having to do hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of legal, which becomes impossible. So we did the hard work, and we're bringing that to everyone as a one-size-fits-most approach, and just really making legal accessible to the world, which kind of goes toward our vision of increasing worker ownership from where it's at today at 8%. We want to increase worker ownership to 30. We want to increase worker ownership from 8%, where it is currently, to 30%. And if we do that, you can check out our vision page. That will dramatically transform the world. It'll only reduce the wealthiest owners, the greatest wealth holders, the top 1%, by about 11% of their wealth. And the bottom 50% of the world will quadruple their wealth. Instead of just giving handouts like universal basic income, you can teach people to fish, give them equity so that they can become and start thinking like an entrepreneur and actually owning something of value. Companies, that's how the rich get richer. They own companies and they appreciate in value. With others, it's hard to do that if you're not accredited. So this allows a way to do that. It's fully legal and inspiring.
Thank you very much for joining me, Casey. Love what you're doing at Upstock. I'll have all the details in the show note, especially for the Web3 fans and the Web2 fans. Check it out and wish you all the best.
Thank you so much, Chris. Pleasure being on your show, and look forward to the next chat.
Thank you for joining Dream Pushers. Inspired. Subscribe and share. With dedication, craft your legacy. Push boundaries.